I should do it with a recording a bit more often. We earlier before. So, we first started out with a bit of math, then started out combining text using the same operators. So you see that a part of numbers, we can also combine text by using the plus. Here we combined text with another number. We went into variables, and now we can add this variable to our text, which then will be replaced by this number, which is what you see here. You can change the variable, do the same, and then get a different result because we use this variable, which now has a different value. If you watch this recording, I hope this wasn't too fast. It was very quick though. We now went into that we have a thing called a document, which is a variable that every website has. On this document, I looked up a method which I know exists, and this one is called get elements by tag name. And I now want to use this function to get a reference to a specific. Let me just do it by an example. I want to use this this function to get access to my h1 tag, which I have defined down here, and I want to change this text here. So I can go on the document and call the function get elements by tag name. And then as a text, I say to this function what elements I want to get. I want to get the h1 tags. Let me just copy this code fraction into Discord. So this is what I'm now executing, and running this will give me a list, or a special type of list. In fact, it is called an HTML collection. I can access each individual member of this list by these two characters. We call it the squared brackets. And within these two, I can say which element I want to get. If I click on this little icon here, I see that this list currently has one entry, and programmers usually tend to start counting at 0. So the first position is 0, the second position is 1. It is kind of a habit that you, as a programmer, will have to get used to. Programmers start counting by 0. If I would now have 2 of them, let's do that as an example. My second beautiful slideshow. Save that one. And now I will get 2 of them. And if I run this command again, just with the get elements by tag name, opening brackets, h1, closing brackets, hit enter, I will get 2 elements now. If you open this one, you see that there's the first one at the index 0 and the second one on index 1. I now want to pick the first one, 0. And when looking at our documentation again, I see that my function here returns an HTML collection. That is correct. Let's click on it. For some reason, I cannot click on it inside the Zoom sharing. So I have to click on it outside here, which brings us to the HTML collection. And maybe they have an, okay, they usually do it with the item function, which is an alternative way. Let's do it this way, because you can easily look it up in the documentation. Returns the specific node at the given zero-based index into the list. Returns null if the index is out of range. An alternative way of accessing, yeah, that is what we had before, which returns this one. This is mostly useful for non-JavaScript implementations. I now wanted to know what I get back from this function. So let's click on that one. And it tells me it returns a node. So if I do this, if I call item dot item, then 0, I will get this first one here. Here we go. This is what I get. This is this element. And now when clicking on this node, I again have to click on it outside of the recording. This is a bit tedious. Anyways, here you now get a definition of what a node is. What I quickly want to get down to is that further down here, you have different things that a node has. And one of them is called inner HTML. But they only have, I know that there is a property called inner HTML because I used it before. I just now find it here as a sample use, but not directly at the documentation. But with this inner HTML, I can change the content of I can change the content of a specific element. So I can write inner HTML equals, where am I? I think I lost myself. Oh, it doesn't show it. Okay. I wrote 2 of these quotation marks and then test exclamation mark inside the quotations. If I now hit enter, this will set this value to this element. It is like assigning it to a different variable, but this entry now here is directly connected to my website. So when I now hit enter, I'm actually setting the new value for my website, which for some reason doesn't work. Let me check that out. HTML all in caps, yes. Give me a second. Here we go. We wrote inner HTML, and the HTML has to look like this, all in capital letters. Thanks, Daniel. Zack, here we go. So we were actually able to change something on our website by using JavaScript. So we can now go ahead and make our slideshow a bit more intuitive. I'm going to click on this icon here to close this one. Zip. Gives me a bit more space on my screen. Instead of writing JavaScript in here, we can also do it in our document. Let's go ahead. We will now learn a new tag called script. In the script tag, you can /script to close it again, to show it that we are done after this one. for a script tag, there are actually different type of scripts that you can use. JavaScript is one of them. So here we actually have to define the type. Text/JavaScript, I think it is. And if we now copy the code that we initially had, let me just change this one. Dot inner HTML equals test exclamation mark. Here we go. I just updated what we had on Discord, and now I'm copying it in here. So we say again, we want the first HTML. We want to get all the HTML tags, all the H1 tags. Take the first one and change the inner HTML. So basically, this stuff here will be thrown away and replaced by test exclamation mark. To be honest, this one, I guess, will throw an error. Let's check it out. Saved it. Reload it. It doesn't show anything here, and it neither changes the text. It should actually show an error here. Or maybe let me do an inspection. Again, a right click. Opening the inspector. For some weird reason, I have problems doing a right click at the area that I share. That is interesting. So I did a right click on my screen, opened the inspector, and the inspector now looks like this. So up here, I already see that I have 17 errors. I think one of them is the one I have. So I just clear that one to get a fresh page, and then run my website again. Oh. It's getting a bit more tedious. I have to change the shared area in order to reload it. Let's see it. Yeah, Elben wrote, I think you need to put the script after H1 are defined. When the script is executed, H1 doesn't exist yet. Ah, yeah, that is true, but I should also see an error, I think. I should see an error. Anyways, let's continue with that. Let's wait for the error later. So now I can do it. Since also HTML is built up from top to bottom, at the time we have this script, the H1 does not exist yet. So we have to move this one a bit further down. That is also one of the reasons why people say that your script should always be at the end of your body. So this one should now go ahead and change it. There we go. And now you see that it happened immediately, because this script is executed immediately, instantly. We can postpone that by various different methods. One method that I want to give you is a button. A button is also an HTML element. Let's move this one above the slideshow. Let's make it in here. Button. Close it also, and then click me. Call it click me. And then it is here. This button currently has, yeah, it is just a button. So it looks like this. And if you click it, it doesn't do anything. Because of some styling, which a button already has predefined, it creates this fancy blue animation background when I click it, but there is no action to it. I can now go ahead and say that I want to modify document.getElements by tag name. I want to modify every button. No, I want to take the first of them, and then I go dot. There was something with, yeah, click. Yes, click is, if I see it correctly, let's write it out again. Click is a function where I can set something to. So I can just say that click should be, let's make this a bit smaller. We will see in a second what it brings. Click shall be a function, and this function has a, and this function shall be this one here. So I cut this one and move it in here. And when I run this one, it should only change my title when I click it, because only when I click, this function should be executed, right? Like the stuff that I've written inside it. Save it, reload it, and now when I click it, let me quickly look something up. Bastian writes me it should be on click. Ah, sorry guys. On click is a property where I can, yeah. Sorry, that one was on click. Click is something different. Sorry for the confusion there. Saving that one. When doing it now, I should be able to, zack, here we go. So what we can actually do now is, if you think about the slideshow down here, we can now add buttons and call the first button 1, the second button 2, 3, 4, and let the system jump to a specific image when you click that button. Because you remember, we can change anything in our document. We can also change here the left value, which I will show you in a second. So first we have these 4 buttons. Let's reduce the number of images to 4. Just removing the rest. And now we say for button number 0. When you click it, we want get elements by, I just saw a different one that is called by class name. So I can, by class name, I can now filter out this element here, slideshow. Can I horizontally split that one? Or just vertically? Ah, here we do it. So you can continue looking at what I wrote down here, whereby I can also go up here. Slideshow. Yeah, for the slideshow, we changed the left. So we can now take the slideshow, the first of them, because I know there is only one. And then we set the style dot left. We want to set to, for the first one, we want to set it to, we now have to define it as text minus, what was it, 500 pixel? Now the first image was at left 0. So we copy this one, take the button number 2, which is on index 1, and set it on minus, it was minus 500 pixel, right? I think so. Could everyone follow along so far? So we have now gone here at the JavaScript. We have defined that when we click on the first button is with index 0. We want to change the left value of our slideshow to 0. And if you click the second button, which has the index number 1, we want, hoppala, sorry. We want this value to change to minus 500 instead. Let's save that one. Take the console down. Reload this thing. And now our button number 3 and 4 shouldn't do anything because they haven't been programmed. But the button number 2 should put it to minus 500. What happened here? I removed the 3 images. So let's reload that one. So button number 2. I think it's the keyframe that overrides it. So also remove the animation up here. Just remove it. Save it. Let me just copy that one into Discord. So that's the updated code. So now, button number 3 and button number 4 do not change anything, but the button number 2, zack, gets us to the second image. And button number 1 gets us back. Clicking 1 again will keep us on the first image, but button number 2 and button number 1 will now bring us from the first to the second image. That's cool. And what I want to do next is, since I know I will have an amount of buttons, and I don't want to copy the code always around, I can take this list and run through it and apply and then do something on each individual of them. So for example, so I can now cut this one off and write this a bit more bit different. Does this one have the, I don't think this one has the property, which I think I have to go with a length and then loop through the individual ones. Let us go through that one. Yes. This here is the total number of elements which we have buttons of. So we're going to save that one to a variable called button count. And now we say for, we take the variable I, which is 0 in the beginning. I'm going to explain this one in a second. And I want to go I++. So this construct here means that that we start off with I at 0. Now check if I, which is 0, is greater than the button count, the number of buttons which I have, which is currently on 4. If it is not greater, then run this code. And after this code is finished, add 1 to our I. So we can test this, or we can make this maybe a bit more visual by writing console log and just give us the I. Console log is a function which will write something on our console down here. So if I now, let's take the rest to where it was before. This is a bit tedious with this thing here. Copy that one and put it down here. So we have it exactly as before. Let me, yeah, otherwise you can also just go to this link. It will always get you to the updated version of my sandbox. If I now run this one, you should see, down here you see it, 0, 1, 2, 3. So we ran this function for, and I was 0, then it was 1, then it was 2, then it was 3. And after that one, this condition here returned false. So I was greater than, or no, sorry, true. So I was greater than button count, and then it stopped. So it ran over down here. And since we now have code that executes for our number 1, for our number 0, for number 1, for number 2, for number 3, we can put this code here in here. And now this code will be executed 4 times. And all of these 4 times, we wanted to select the item at the index I, which is first the one on 0, then on 1, then on 2, then on 3, right? And for all these elements, for all these buttons, I want to set a click event that should set the style left to a number that is the index multiplied by -500. And then we want to add a px in the end. So if this now runs 4 times, first it runs with the index 0, takes the first button, it calculates I, which is 0, multiplied by -500. 0 multiplied by something is always 0. So the first button will set it to 0 pixel. The second button will then have I multiplied by -500 is -500. So the second button will set it to -500. Third button will set it to minus 1,000. And fourth button will set it to minus 1,500. Does that make sense? If we run this one, we should have a working slideshow. Which works for all the buttons, except for that my calculation is a bit off. This is where I want to get a bit into debugging. So do it. Now I can do a right click, inspect. And we can now let me move my inspector in. Here we go. So this is my HTML document here now. Body. On here I have my different things. And here's my slideshow where I set the value. And every time I click on something, let me just, how can I do this? I want to dock it in here, then minimize that one, take it a bit down, and then take this one a bit down. Now you can live see down here what we actually changed. So when we click the button number 1, changes it to minus 2,000, minus 500, minus 2,000, and now again on 2,000. Oh, that is my bad. This is now getting a bit interesting. We have to do this a bit differently. We have to save our I and then take that new value here. The reason is that when we run this code, the first time my I is 0, right? And the second time it's 1, the third time it's 2, and then the fourth time it is 3. But when we execute this function, our I is already on 3, right? So we have to save it. No, but when this makes it complicated. It makes it complicated. Just replace this var by let. I think that makes it. This is JavaScript has some weird things that sometimes make it very complicated. So this is just most of the programming languages have their things where they are a bit weird. For the first round, in order to this, I would just accept it. But now when I click on this, it gets index. True, because I removed it. I have to set that back to I. Index didn't exist here because I defined it and then removed it. So now, yeah, that one works. That one works. It jumps from one position to another position. So now we set a fixed value. We change that value all the time. I'm just looking for something because in CSS, there's something that makes, I think it is a transition. Before we have worked with keyframes, and keyframes is when JavaScript loops or changes values, right? We can also, when values are changed from the outside, like for example from our JavaScript, we can delay until the final value is reached. to show you what that means, I'm just going to type it out. There is a JavaScript operation that is called transition. And in a transition, you can CSS transition Mozilla. I'm just also looking it up. Here we go. So in a transition, you can define a value or define a CSS property and then a number of seconds. And then you can, let's reset this one. And this we can use to delay certain things. For example, now we set the left value, right? If we want to delay the time until the final value is reached, we can do that by transition, by setting a number, by setting a time that we want to pass until the final value is reached. Let's say 1 second. You could limit it to specific properties, like for example, left. If you, for example, want a different time delay for other properties, but you can also define it just generally for all the properties. I'm going to specify it to left here because I don't know what other language, what other properties I want to change in the future. If I now click on 2, you see that it takes 1 second until the final position is reached. But the changing of values happens via JavaScript. So I, in JavaScript, set the left position of this one here to the final value. And then CSS does the transition from the value, from the one value to the other. And this is some things where I personally say you get these two languages perfectly playing together with each other, because now you can also just click between these images and it will always be a perfect transition. It will always take 1 second until you reach your final position, the final value that you want left to be. That is a bit of a slideshow. And if we want now, we can also go into the automatic transition. Like normally on a slideshow, it is like that, that images go on their own, right? We can also do it via the left and right key. This is something that might be interesting to start with. Let's go ahead. There's this function. Let's take our, I think it is on the document again. Yeah. Is there an on key down? Yes. When you type on key, there are 3 different events. And that is what they mean is a bit depending on, like, which one is the right one depends on your use case. For example, if you take it in an in a more physical way, then when you press a key, for example, you press down the F key, then in this time as you hold it down, the system will receive the notification that this key is now pressed. And as you release it, it doesn't have this. Now that is very, very confusing explained. Sorry, that was a bit from a physics thing. I like physics. But on key down is the first event. that occurs, that is when you press that key down. You just get one single event. And the on key up is what you get when you release the key. So when you actually press a key, when I now press a D, the system receives at least two events. That is one key down and then one key up. And then there is also this, which we saw now, on key press. This one is actually made by the system if it receives a key down and does not receive a key up within, I think, more than 200 milliseconds. It will call a couple of key pressed events, and that you see in action if you just hold down the D. If you hold it down, wait, bad positioning. Let's do it on the console. If I press D, that doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? Let's do it here on the URL. If I press D, I'm on a Mac, that's bad. On a Windows, if you press D and hold it down, it will press D multiple, it will continue printing D multiple times. I hope I can get you that one in Visual Studio Code. No, that is the bad side of being on a Mac. Yes, some things work on Windows that don't work on a Mac. But on Windows, you should see this phenomena. So we can also just try it out. Key press, on key press, receives a function, which will be called once this event is triggered. And then we can just write it out on the console. Then reload it. And if we now, being on that website, press a key, there's something I did wrong. On key press. Function. We got a lot of errors. Let's check them out. Nah, those are, D is not defined. Ah, this is from here. What about now? Reloading it. Here it works. So you get a message each time I press a key. Now the interesting thing is which key did I actually press? Because if I now press a D or if I press a Q, it wouldn't do anything different. Or I could press the left button or the right button and it wouldn't. And it would just print key pressed. Let me just get the Mozilla documentation up for that one. Key down event, but I think here I already get. Here they do it in a different way. Here they call the function add event listener for the event key down, which is basically the same what we do. And then you can also give it a function which has which gets one variable as input, and that is an event. And this event is now what we have here a description of. Key down was the one we used. No, key press. So let's go to key press event. Oh, no longer recommended. Yeah, that we should, then I think we should stick to the other one. Key down. Let's change that in a second. The key down and key up events provide a code indicating which key was pressed. For example, a lowercase a will be recorded as 65 by a key down. Do we somewhere get a table? Or we just print it out? We just print it out. On key press, we print the key pressed. In our function here, we also get the event, as we know now. This is now, let's change this one to an on key down. You can hear me back again? I just had the problem that my Mac kicked out my mic. Is the mic working? Nice, perfect. Now we can take here the, as we saw in the documentation, our event has a parameter called key code, which is the key that is pressed. So let's see what we have. Event.keycode. Oh, we get completion for that one. That's nice. Saving it. And now I want to know what the key code for my left and right arrows are. You can use whatever keys you want, but I want to change to the next slide when I hit the left arrow. Taking that a bit down. Clicking into the browser here and then hitting left. The arrows do not do anything. Ah, now they do. So 37 is the key left and 39 is the key right. Now we can do, if I am on, if my key code is 37, I think it was, sorry, as a number, then I want to do the following. I want to take the slideshow left value, just save it. Let's stick to the, let's stick to this one. I don't use the var anymore. I use const if I want to have something that does not change, and let, as I used it here, for things that change. This has a bit to do with JavaScript internals. You can look it up a bit further if you want. It has a deep history about it. But I use const and let if I want to define a variable now. Slideshow left. It is just to make the screen a bit, to utilize the screen a bit better. So here I saved the value of this left style. I want to parse it to a number. A number is also called an integer. And then I want to take this number. If I press left, I want to take this number minus 500, because 500 is the value of one image, as we said earlier, and save this value back to this variable. And then also adding the px in the end. And this works until I reach the last image, but that we can go to in a second. If I press save on that one, let me just close the console here to utilize the screen a bit better. Saving that one, going back to our website. If I now here click the left arrow, 37 is pressed, but it doesn't do anything. So let's do what I do sometimes is I check if this code was executed by writing a console log. So I want to know if it went here. Write some meaningful message. And then I can, when pressing the left, I see that it doesn't go there. Why not? Does it need it like that? Is it a text? Sometimes comparing a number to a text does not give you the intended result. Reload the page, maybe that could be a reason. Ah, here we go. Left key was pressed. So I get that message, but nothing happens. That means something is wrong with my version down here. Maybe I should take that one into parentheses. It removes it again. Style left equals. That should set it. Let me open the inspector again. I'm a bit back and forth. Our time is. We still have about. No. What about our time? I think we still have a bit of a while. Let's see this one. How does this value change? My problem was that initially this style.left does not have a value. So if I now hit left, this key is pressed, but this one here does not have a value. So let's say save this to the value that is the result of there or 0. Okay, that makes it a bit complicated. Let me copy that one. Third. It doesn't let me copy it. It is too many. It has too many. Okay, so this message is too long. Okay, I'm just going to copy this function. So here we go. Now after this change, it doesn't work. Why not? It doesn't show any errors. Wait a second, reverting that one. Okay, now at least that one works. And now also the right one works. I have to debug this afterwards, why it doesn't work initially. But after you click a button once, then it works. Yes, but now when you keep pressing this value, it always goes to the left, to the left, to the left, but there are no more images anymore, right? So once we reach a show left, that is less than our amount of images, we wanted to go to 0. Because 0 would then be our first image again. So we can take this one, and there is a mathematical operator that is called modulo. Let's take it on 2000, a fixed number of the 2 images. Or we can, no. We can take the button count, because the button count is our number of images. Oh, this is gonna get nasty. Multiplied by -500. So this is the lowest value it can go. If it goes lower, then we should reset it to 0. That is what the modulo operator does. The modulo operator gives us the rest of a division. For example, if you have 5 and divided by 3, that is now 5 and divided by 2, that would be 2 rest 1. If you don't want to divide it further, right, and get into sub counts, into partial numbers. We basically do that as a trick, and now our left should work as expected. Does the modulo make sense to you? Or is there confusion about it? It is a bit of an interesting concept with the modulo. Maybe I should explain that one with a small sample. If I have, let's say 5 and divided by 2, this one will get 2.5. I can also take 2 and take it modulo 2, and that will return me 1, because 2 divided by 2, if I don't want to divide it into fractions, I have a 1 left, right? If I take now 10 and take it on modulo 2, it will return 0, because 10 can be divided by 2 without leaving a fraction. If I take 9 and take a modulo on 2, now let's take a modulo on 4. 2 times 4 is 8, right? So there will also be 1 left if I take a modulo on 4. Does the modulo operator make sense? Or did it rather confuse you than help? It is kind of a neat way to say, if you get beyond that value, return me something based on 0 again, if that makes sense. Basically, in here it says don't allow to go further left than our amount of images is. If you exceed the numbers, jump back to 0. And that is how the left arrow is implemented here. Yes. We now can remove the console logs because those were just for getting a notification about things. And we can now, to make it simple for one time, we can copy this one, take it on 39, because 39, I think, was the key for right. And if we go right, we change this one here to plus 500. And now it gets interesting, because now I think this one doesn't work anymore. Now this trick doesn't work anymore for this way. If slideshow left is greater or equal than 0, then set our slideshow left to minus the maximum value to go to the last one again. Man, that was more complicated than I thought initially. This should now give us both ways. Let me just paste that whole on key down function into our channel. Here we go. Reload it. You first have to click one of the buttons, and then the left and the right value should work. Right. In here, in the 39, I have to define this one as let. That is a bit of the burden that JavaScript sometimes brings you. You have to define when a variable can be changed and when it cannot be changed. That makes it a bit of a hassle sometimes. Just going through the sample that I posted on the channel. Yeah, that one should be updated now. Now trying this one out again. First clicking on a button and now left. Works. And if I go right, that one also works. The only thing that if I click right, the website also jumps a bit. But it works with the slideshow. Yeah. I hope this was not all too complicated to go and to follow up with me. I think in 5 minutes we will have the live stream again, so we can so I will end a bit better on time for that one this time. Tomorrow on the MMO game, which will be a follow-up on the 2 talks that we had here, we will be making use of everything we learned today in order to create a multiplayer game like this one. Like then we will make use of changing things via JavaScript. For example, here, I change the position of the player if I hold down the key A. And if I hold down the key D, it runs into the other direction. When I press W, it jumps. And when I hit and when I press down the key E, it can shoot. And this bullet, for example, is also an element that I let appear on the scene, move on, check if it hit the other player, and then remove from the scene. So all this is done via JavaScript. And if you could follow along today, I think this will give you a bit more of the process of how to think when dealing with variables. You have to check for values if they are in the state that I need, if the result will give a meaningful value, and then you can set it, and then it appears on the scene. Yes. So if you like this one, join me tomorrow. Could you send the whole slideshow in the channel? Yes, I will do. Let me just try to pack that whole thing up in one individual file that I can add here into the channel. I hope this made you or sparked the interest. If you want, join me definitely tomorrow so we can set the or get started with the ego shooter. And otherwise, if you did not understand everything I talked about, feel curious to read up on the documentation. As I mentioned a lot these days, I like the Mozilla documentation. They are very expressive. They, to me, explain things in a very good way. Otherwise, feel also free to try out others. There are also a lot of YouTube videos out there on various things. Riley asks, did you learn with w3schools.com? I used it a bit, and then there was 1 or 2 things where I found it a bit complicated explained, and then I moved over to Mozilla and have only used that. But W3 Schools is also a very good resource. Yes, the file is online. And by that, I say thanks very much for hanging out and hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Or at least we can stop the screen sharing and now move on to the live channel, which starts in 2 minutes.